So I guess, Rafa, to level set a conversation, why don't you give us an overview of this proposal that you're working on? What do you want to achieve through this proposal, and how did it come together?
Yeah. My background, by the way, I worked in organization design and in kind of like commercial strategy and consulting for over a decade. And you know, I joined Web3, worked in a bunch of DAOs, kind of trial by fire, and have also been doing actually this year quite a bit of research on algorithmic coordination. So how people coordinate online, but without necessarily with central entities and stuff. So you can think about using protocols as a mechanism for alignment and coordination and growth. So different types of organizations that are emerging. I know there was a conversation on Farcaster. Someone said, I don't know if Nouns is a DAO exactly, but that question is kind of interesting. What's something that I do think is Nouns is kind of algorithmically coordinating through all the different online spaces. In Instagram and Farcaster and in X, or formerly Twitter, all what's happening is Nouns is living embedded into the ecosystem in which it exists, and that's super exciting and super fascinating. I also am the founder of a community called Folklore. So, folklore.institute is the main website where we curate and commission long form content with regards to what I call the digital humanities or media theology. So, it's an online club moving into becoming a DAO of sorts. Where the membership doesn't really go to any specific cost, but it gets pulled together into a treasury, kind of like Nouns, and gets allocated to, instead of builders, to actually researchers and writers. So we have the goal is to create a perpetual media machine where we continue to explore these topics, how people are coordinating online, and so on and so forth. And through Folklore, I actually connected on Farcaster with Rafi because we were trying to build a new type of app where we can broadcast using a Web3 signature into an RSS feed. And that's kind of how I met Rafi. And Rafi and I were talking, we are like, we want to build more. We want to do more of this. We want to get our hands dirty and actually continue contributing to the ecosystem, not just with a single app, but broader. And when the Nouns channel and Farcaster really blew up, and my research actually wrapped up last month, I was like, you know what? We should start building for Nouns. Let's listen. And so we spent the majority of the last month, as you probably noticed me being very active on Farcaster, really trying to engage with the people from Nouns to understand what are their core issues, what's going on with the fork, what's going on with the burn, what are the drivers of the issues that are existing today, and where Nouns could really use some help. And through the conversations that Rafi and I were having, what we discovered was our own builder experience was a good starting point. It was hard to get onboarded to Nouns because we didn't know what to build. And so that came back to what metrics are Nouns trying to work with, and we couldn't find a dashboard that worked. We couldn't find a database that had metrics that worked, and we were like, okay, I think we've got a starting point here. How can we create the metrics not just for community awareness, but the metrics which allow builders to say, hey, this is something that I could build because it would contribute to the growth of Nouns, to the meme. And that's how we ended up at the Nouns Pulse.
Anything you want to add, Rafi?
Yeah, so at the beginning when we started to brainstorm different ideas for the nouns, like the first thing that popped to my mind is that, like the noun is like a group of people who have the same aim, or like a different set of aim that are trying to like target in one direction. And usually when us, as well as Rafa, we have like this consulting background and work with many different companies. And usually in these companies, you always have KPIs or like some kind of metrics that show like the managers, the people, in what kind of direction the whole company or the whole organization is going. And we were kind of surprised that there were no something relevant in this area, and we thought it's a very good idea to start with.
I think an interesting realization that we had too was even though like Dune, for example, creates dashboards for like treasury and on-chain transactions, we felt that the focus and the kind of like the jobs to be done that the Dune dashboard was the Dune dashboards, which didn't work by the way, were kind of focusing on were not the right ones, because Nouns is not about how much money is in the treasury. It's not about even how many unique holders exist. It's really about spreading the meme. And so when we thought about, okay, how do we begin the journey to find North Star metrics and the metrics which help with Noun's proliferation, we need to think about it from this type of proliferation standpoint. And Rafi and I were talking about it's not enough to look at on-chain data. It's not enough to look at forecaster activity. We need to see these together, and we need to start looking at this as a holistic view. And I think this is part of the zeitgeist on we need to start thinking about online presence, not just Web3 or Web2 presence.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot to unpack here. When I was reading your proposal, I realized that you specifically mentioned something like you want to track the memes, not the people, right? So can you expand more on what you mean by that?
Yeah, so we were writing the proposal, and we were thinking about creating kind of this like leaderboard table, and we were and Rafi said something really fascinating. He said, this shouldn't be like the Twitter accounts, or this shouldn't be the Farcaster accounts. We should be looking at which noun is more popular. And I was like, yeah, like we should be seeing how much the burn is contributing to the conversation and what % of the conversation is related to a specific proposal. And this happened in tandem. I think it was kind of this hive mind that was happening on Farcaster too, where people were talking about, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be able to track conversations with each of the proposals, not just the on-chain comments, but also the buzz in other places. And Rafi and I were talking about, we kind of had this like emergent idea where Nouns is not about the individual people as much as it's about the memes which are contributing to the proliferation. Now, that's like an ambitious vision, I will say, because right now, a lot of the databases that we have track people, and what we want to start tracking are these trends. So it's more like Twitter trends, but we want to start quantifying them and start saying, hey, which ones are actually the driving force here? What's the sentiment around them? Are they actually positively contributing to the Noun mission? Are they aligned to the Noun mission? And that's I think where we want our ambition to go through, which is start looking at data from the contribution to the Noun's proliferation, not just individual people and how popular they are.
Yeah, and to make sure that I understand correctly, I'm going to play it back to you, and basically you are trying to track not just sort of specific individual and sort of their contribution to the DAO, but you are looking at different topics, be it specific noun or a proposal or a trending social media topic. And then you want to attribute the attention that Nouns is getting to each of those topics, and then you sort of rank them and have a leaderboard. Is this sort of right?
Yeah, that's it. That's where we want to get to. I don't know. I mean, this is like, again, I mentioned ambitious vision because the data is not necessarily structured that way. But that's kind of our North Star, which is you can imagine a situation where certain nouns characters become popular, and we can attribute like derivatives to those characters. And so when we think about investments from, let's say, a treasury perspective, we can talk about investment in a new character or investment on a character which has a lot of momentum right? And that's kind of where the concept comes in, where can nouns ride the meme wave and then accelerate their proliferation across like the different online spaces.
Yep. And then, to go a bit into the specifics,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about the technical design and to sort of the framework that you're going to use to track those metrics?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pass it on to Rafi, who might have some starter ideas on how to do this, and he might know some of the more technical details.
Yeah, so like the idea of having like tracking specific noun is like this long shot of what we are trying to achieve. But at the beginning, what we want to actually establish is like the having start to gather the information across different media channel, be it Farcaster, Instagram, Twitter, or what is happening on the chain through the noun subgraph. And try to pack it up together in one place where people can actually see the raw data, how many casts there were, how many people are mentioning nouns on the Instagram, how many pictures there were, and let the people see what kind of information, what kind of behavior across the networks is the most valuable information to make a decision when it comes to the proposals, when it comes to seeing how the nouns brand is going. And our first take is to create those raw metrics and then expand to aggregate all of them and to some specific master metrics, which would be like a indicator of how noun is doing in general.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Rafi you're pointing at is the first step towards quantifying memes is actually having a broad horizon of identifying what is nouns. So if we think about nouns as the biggest meme, right? Nouns as a full concept, they're like the first step towards the breakdown of what contributes to nouns is also figuring out what can we identify what is nouns regardless of what sub meme it actually is. And so there's a question about, for example, on-chain data. Okay, so we have on-chain data related to the treasury and transactions. We have on-chain data related to specific nouns and specific proposals. We have on-chain data potentially that of derivative projects that we might want to consider. So that's like one aspect of the universe. Then you have the nouns channel on Farcaster. That's very explicitly nouns. Can we identify things that are happening in Farcaster that are related to nouns but not in the nouns channel? That's like an interesting like business question, something that we're digging into during this body of work. And then can we identify in Instagram what's related to like nouns? And like this is kind of interesting because it's not as simple as saying, okay, which comments are related to nouns or what has a hashtag of like nouns DAO. You might also want to look at comments that have the little glasses, right? The Unicode glasses on them. And so the problem is not. I think we're at the scope of the initial proposal is can we start thinking about the nouns meme overall and can we get all that data together? And then what we want to be able to do from there is begin clustering that information.
Yeah, and for example, the Nouns esports team is playing in
Yeah,
the TI right now, right? I think that they're going to have a match later today. I guess you would, not just, looking at the data on Forecaster, obviously, because a lot of the Dota fans are not on Forecaster yet.
that's
So I guess you would look at Twitter, Instagram, I guess TikTok, and all of that, and try to combine those data sources and then come up with an index. Is that right? You need to find a way to combine them together.
Yeah, yeah. And like Rafi and I were actually just on a call like right before this talking about what do we want to tackle in the first kind of like phase of this because as a feedback that we got during the proposal, this is a big challenge and we're new builders to the nouns ecosystem and we need to we want to be able to do right by the community as to what's useful. And so there's kind of this trade-off between how much do we want to like bite off at the same time that the nouns community feels comfortable with giving us. And so I think from a scoping perspective, what we've talked about so far is the on-chain data, the Farcaster data. We want to include the Instagram data as well. And what we want to do is set a framework so that we can just clip on new off-chain. We need to start considering, how are we going to stack this information together? Is it possible to combine them all into a sort of like activity? And that's kind of the part of the direction that we're going on. Rafi, any additional comments?
Yeah, when it comes to stuff like events, like for example, this esport event that you mentioned, it's like very important to not hide everything behind like a specific metric and so on, because the reactions to a specific happening, activity, event could happen on many different channels. So in case of, if we'd already have a nouns pools right now, we'd be actually able to see when what kind of activities is happening across different channel, be it like Instagram activity, Twitter activity, Discord activity, and see how each of like events, like the sport event, is actually contributing to the brand. So at the beginning, we want to focus on providing the raw metrics, like the numbers of Instagram posts and like the list of it, the stream of it, to help the whole Noun community get the intuition about what really matters, and then try to go deeper and provide more like streamlined metrics that would include that intuition and provide more insightful data.
Yeah, I think the main thing though for me is that and I think this happens with a lot of companies. We don't want to do data for the sake of data. We want to use data that the nouns community and builders and adjacent builders can actually use for decision making, for proposal development, for proposal success evaluation, and for other types of planning. Like if we know the esports event is happening and we see that there's, you can imagine in the future, there's a spike on Instagram but not Farcaster, we might want to ask, how do we get esports into Farcaster? And then suddenly you might have a proposal that's an extension from the esports team to be able to bridge content from one media space to another. And that's kind of where we want to see the action take place. I don't think our proposal is going to be successful unless the data that we start providing is actually influencing both the type of work, but also providing clarity to the nouns community of what other proposals should they make, and how proposals should be shaped.
Yeah, and I noticed that one component of this proposal is that you are trying to create a database. You call it a meme activity database, DMAT, which is a nice acronym. So I guess could you explain a bit more about how you can, put them into a database, and this sort of like a public utility where other people could also use, right? So maybe explain more about how this database.
Rafi, do you want to chat a little bit?
Sure. So right now, like managing all of the information from different sources is quite hard. You have to have different API keys, create separate programs for each of the source, and it is actually very hard to like discover and join and treat like the activity that is happening across different networks in the same way. So the idea of the mod is to bring all of the different sources together that are related to the nouns into a single database, into a single interface that would enable, first of all, to create the nouns pulse and the website with all of the metrics, as well as enable other builders in the nouns community to have access to everything nouns related across different networks, be it on the chain or the off-chain, through one common API interface. And I think it is very important to do, because coming back to the previous esport example, if we are able to measure stuff and have data about stuff, especially when it's stacked across different sources, we are able to come up with new ideas and and make new conclusions about different proposals or like the different projects we're going to tackle.
It's interesting for me to think about that as a public utility, because that's I think what we're aiming to do here. You can imagine a situation where nouns.camp or any of the other clients that are providing information on proposals can pull information very easily about the current noun state. So I think even though we're building a website ourselves, what I would like to see, again, from a success criteria is the other nouns clients also pulling metrics and data. And even, you can imagine a situation, which is where we want to get to, where let's say the esports team wants to ask, hey, how much attention did we grab, right, when we were competing? And I think that's where they might want to add that to that page, might want to add that to a prop update, right? And that's, I think, where the power is going to come in, where we're going to facilitate other proposals to be able to talk about the impact that they've had.
Yep, I think that's going to be very helpful, for proposers to track, their own progress, and then,
Yeah.
as you said, put that as part of the prop dates. So I think that's a great idea. And now maybe talk more about the product roadmap. You've listed three phases in the proposal, and obviously I understand you guys are going to iterate a lot. But right now, what is your plan? What is your roadmap?
Well, before we jump into that, I'm curious from your side. When you think about the Aburra prop, and your kind of like success metric and success criteria, what type of metrics are you kind of like looking for? And what, is there a possibility that some of the metrics that we're gathering might be useful for you?
100%. I mean, initially, Aburra is when we were putting up a proposal, the definition of success was pretty clear, which was, how many people in the Nouns ecosystem are going to use, this app, right? Both as speakers and as listeners. So that was just our sort of initial definition of success. But also, I think after sort of reading your prop and after the conversation that we just had, I realized that there could be another layer of this, which is sort of from the meme perspective. Right? We were thinking about the people, thinking about their daily active users, but if we think about it from the meme perspective, how much amplification has Aburra done for nouns, right? I mean, the fact that people can create all kinds of spaces, but then they'll also see the noggles as part of the emoji reactions,
Yeah.
for example, is one way for people to ask questions. What are those noggles? What values do they represent? So I think I would definitely try to find a way to see, if the creation of this app has led to the proliferation of the meme, and that is sort of that hard topic hard metric to track, because you basically have to do a causality analysis, right? Does the usage of this app cause more people to care about nouns, to talk about nouns? But if we didn't have this conversation, or I wouldn't even think in that direction. But now that you've mentioned, we should track the mean. I think we'll definitely put that as part of our success metric.
Yeah, and I think that's like something to think about too. Like even like we can also think about like Farcaster and comments there. It's really exciting to think that Farcaster might just enable that to happen. It's a lot harder to maybe check how many people intentionally engage with the nouns like emoji or whatnot. But even with Aburra, something that's kind of interesting is you could potentially quantify how many people who don't have a Noun's NFT or not associated with a Noun's NFT have used the emojis in your app, right? For the first time or for the second time. And that's kind of like a cool thing. There's a metric there that might be something that you can surface. And again, I see success in our prop to help people think about this, because the next level of maturity for the Nouns ecosystem is that we start not just proliferating the meme, but being able to prove the proliferation of the meme. I think that's where the real power begins, because allocation of treasury should go to the people who are really undoubtedly, driving the meme proliferation, being the causal effect, like you said, of really expanding, proselytizing those values.
100%. And in the past, I guess in a past life, I've worked on some analytics projects. Some of them are sort of social media analytics projects, or e-commerce, analytics. And basically, what a lot of brands cared, was if you spent $1 into social media marketing, right? How much impressions are you going to get, and what is the sort of return on investments for those social media spendings? But obviously, Nouns is a brand, but it's not a traditional brand. So
Yeah.
obviously we're not going to just follow the traditional sort of brand playbook, but it is important to understand what is ROI here if we are spending. And we're going to accelerate our spending, to proliferate a meme. So again,
Yeah.
the first step towards success is to measure it, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I think I very much resonate with your proposal and the fact that you are trying to create an analytics tool for people to understand how much proliferation that.
Yeah, definitely. Rafi, do you want to talk about the roadmap and maybe give some hints as to what we talked about today as well? Or comments about what we've been talking about too?
Yes, so we read through all of the feedback, and we really doubled down on making it more iterative. And right now we are considering breaking the known pools prop into 3 different phases. Because before, what we try to do is create the meme database, and then gather all of the data, and then present some final UI for the whole website. But right now, what we are going with is that we want to, first of all, create a first version with a basic UI, limited branding, and present the forecaster data already on the website with all of the metrics or with all of the charts. And then for the next phase, we are going to expand to the on-chain data that we are going to pull from Noun subgraph. And then on the third phase, we're going to include the Instagram metric. So the change we are making is that instead of having this one final product that we are going to deliver, we broke down the deliverables of the whole project into 3 phases, where each phase, each deliverable will be usable by and useful for all of the people.
Fantastic. And do you want to briefly touch on the ask of the proposal and how the funding is going to be spent?
Yeah, Rafa?
Yeah. So currently we're asking for 25 ETH, which is about 2 months of work between Rafi, and myself. And one of the questions that always comes up, that number might change a little bit with the revisions that we're having. And we can talk about some of those questions in a second, but it's kind of split 25% on my side and 75% for Rafi, because Rafi's doing the development, heavy lifting there. And then there's about a 40-40-10 split between data engineering, visuals, and the handoff, with a 10% reserve for post-launch feedback and bug work. I think for us, we're going to find out, I guess, fuck around to find out, right? Whether that's like the right level. But, I think it's important to note that we as builders are committed to essentially both like exploring this pricing and also reporting back on like how it actually turned out. So part of the revisions that we're doing to the proposal is we're going to be doing streams, and then each of the phases that Rafi mentioned, we're going to have some milestones for each one. And I do think that this is the standard that we should set for new builders, which is streamed Ethereum, clarity on the milestones, and I think we need to make it easy for the Noun DAO to also say, hey, this isn't working in the right direction. I don't think it's that easy to do nowadays, but I do think that we need to contribute to the journey to making it easy for builders and the Nouns community to kind of have stream payments for the work that they're doing and also be able to have an honest conversation about the progress that's being made.
Yeah, I mean the Aburra proposal used this stream, and I think it is a great way to align incentives. I mean, I guess today to cancel a stream, you have to the DAO has to pass a proposal to cancel it, right? But theoretically, it is possible.
Yeah.
But I want to get into some of the backstories of both of you. But before I do that, anything specific related to the proposal that we haven't talked about?
Well, one of the things that we're debating internally, and we'll put this question out there for the Q&A in case anybody is listening, is like, if you had to choose between creating the leaderboard in the Nouns race or including additional like off-chain data from Instagram or Discord or Twitter, like what would you do? And like, I don't know, Bill, if you have like a perspective on that. We internally, we wanted to create something kind of interesting and push the boundary to what analytics could look like, and that's where the Nouns race and the kind of like the meme popularity came into play. But we also acknowledge that there's some practical need for kind of like off-chain information.
Yeah, I mean, just my, sort of immediate reaction to that. I guess the first step, I think, is probably to publish the metrics, and then you will get sort of feedback on, which subset of the metrics are people most passionate about.
Yeah.
And then sort of your leaderboard can center around those metrics, because I really like the idea of sort of having a race, but also it is, I guess nowadays it's hard to get people to care about anything, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to create a race, it's better to do something to make it around some metrics that people care about.
Yeah.
So I don't have a intuitive understanding of like how much people care about how much people care about the Instagram metrics, for example, because actually I don't use Instagram at all, and how much people care about the Twitter metrics, versus Farcaster. I don't really know. I spend most of my time on Farcaster nowadays, but I guess the only way to find out is probably to publish them early,
Yeah.
and then to see how people.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible.
That
Yeah.
aligns quite well with what we discussed internally, because like if we are going to focus on the first run with the metrics, first of all, we are going to be able to have the meme activity database and the metrics quicker, and it's going to be It's going to be great for the community because first of all, we are going to give the metrics quicker, as well as provide the API for all of the data that we are having to other builders. So even if the noun race in this form or the other could be implemented, it doesn't have to be done by us. It can be done by other people through the prop process or individually by other people, contributors.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Dune dashboards have done really well is that people like to share them, right? So there is a social element to those dashboards, and so I guess if you could find, what type of dashboards people like to share, and then you can double down on them, and then make a leaderboard and so make a contest out of it. Um, so yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents. And I'll also, you should definitely post that on the Denounce channel and see how people react.
Yeah, yeah, great idea.
To 10 minutes, if you guys can stay a bit longer, to talk about sort of some of your backstories and your background. I understand you guys have briefly touched on your background at the beginning, but maybe Rafa, do you want to talk about sort of I read your article on digital public utility as well as the research piece that you sent me. I feel like you have done a lot of work on sort of organizational design and governance design, and I guess you've thought a lot about sort of on-chain / digital organizations. So maybe talk a bit about sort of your journey into crypto, your and what sort of led you to where you are.
Yeah. So the main thing for me was I took a sabbatical during the pandemic after about, yeah, it was over 10 years of work, and during that time, I was actually interviewing different artisans around the island and looking at how people were like connecting. And I don't know, I'd been following crypto for 6 years then at that point, since like 2014, 2015. I'd been like reading the white papers. I remember reading the Ethereum white paper when it came out. And unfortunately, I didn't buy any Ethereum, but I read it and I was super excited about it. And so while I was talking to artisans on the island, I was realizing how much the online economy was not accessible to a large group of people. And I was thinking about how to enable kind of access to the online economy and also rethink the ways of working in coordination. So the artisans, for example, were using WhatsApp to talk to each other, but didn't necessarily have like ways to coordinate besides phone calls. And without thinking about DAOs at all, I kind of drafted up the idea of creating a DAO, or what later turned out to be a DAO. And about a year later, when the DAO summer came along in summer 2021, I was like, oh my God, this is like exactly the same blueprint. I still have the white paper that I wrote about how I wanted the cooperative to work in Puerto Rico, and I just didn't realize that crypto would have enabled it. And so since then, since 2021, then I quit my job, saying I need to work on this like full time, because this is the type of like innovation that I want to see, not just for people in software and people who are working in tech and startups in Silicon Valley, but I want to be able to see this accessible for anyone working in any industry, and specifically these methods of cooperation for a lot of civilians who don't have necessarily an active voice, or enough power in their voice in their different localities. So I really wanted to see that happen, and that's kind of where the driver for my work it comes through, and that led me to work at Mirror. That led me to the research on online swarms that I did this summer, and brought me. I've been following Noun since its inception, looking at the model that it had and comparing it. I even wrote a personal case study on Nouns, to kind of understand how it works best and what toolkits are used. So it's been really enlightening to be able to use that as a driving force, really understand the impact that it could have at the ground level for a lot of people who are not in Silicon Valley or in one of the major metropolis of the world.
Fantastic story. And Rafi, do you want to share your journey into crypto and sort of what motivates you to work on, sort of on-chain organization staff?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I'm coming from like a very small. I was born in a very small village in Central Europe, and like the only window to the world I actually had was the internet. And I remember that the first time when I was like 9 years old, I got like this broadband internet, and when I first connected to the to like this local America Online alternative. I immediately started to participate in the bulletin boards. And after a couple of months, I actually started to create my own discussion boards using, like PHP, BB, and my BB software, open source software. And I remember to this day, like this kind of vibe I was getting, that I was able to like be completely cut off the world, like living in this small village and being able to connect with anyone in the country. And it was kind of like my first like aha moments when it comes to what does it mean to live in networked society, what actually internet enabled. And my first projects that I did was like this gaming community that I created when I was a teenager, which later grew to be like the biggest one in Central Europe, which later on I got acquired by fandom.com. And then after this, I immediately started to do other community related work on the front of the Tumblr website, where we started to do like our own brand of clothing and so on, which we basically created a fashion house that was like this small family business that actually functions to this day. And after like playing around by creating those small like enterprises, businesses, I decided I wanted to focus more on the technology, how everything works, because so far I kind of felt that I didn't really understand how the world works, because so far I just like I tried stuff out, created stuff, and it kind of like popped and it was quite successful. So I decided to work a decade in industry, like mostly focusing on the full stack work. And for the last couple of years, I've been working on the machine learning and doing like this social semantic social network analysis and basically doing anything that is related to the AI. And I doubled down on crypto. I think it was 2 years ago when I started my sabbatical, and the reason I was drawn into that is because I got tired after 10 years working for the big companies and small companies and the startups. I started to dwell into the small communities of crypto. First on Twitter, where I actually kind of like see Rafa for the first time. He was like one of the first accounts that I followed, and that was crypto related. And then when I started to participate on Farcaster and in smaller communities, I kind of started to get this feeling of what I felt when I was a teenager, going through all of the discussion boards and so on. And I thought, wow, I remember I was this small boy that were able to connect with different people. And I realized that the internet is not something that happened, but it is something that is actually happening. And there are like many people in this world who are in the similar position that I was in when I was a kid. And, I just want to expand or like bring this the feeling of connectivity and everything that comes with it to all of the people who don't have it yet. And I think, crypto and like this idea of openness and open protocol is going to enable that.
Yeah, and I think that's also why, all of us are here, right? Is to fight for a more open, more permissionless future. So thank you for sharing your backstories, both of you. It's really fantastic talking to you guys, learning about the proposal and your background. Before I let you go, any last words that you want to share?
Well, thank you for hosting us. I know I'm glad you said yes to the cold DM on getting part of the conversation. But honestly, I think we got to set each builder in the Nouns community really needs to work towards setting the standard. And I think Rafi and myself want to be able to be part of that process, not just in terms of quality of our execution, but also in the iterative approach and the values alignment, and also the openness, so that we can invite other people to really participate in the Nouns ecosystem, submit their own proposals. If you're listening to this and you need some guidance, reach out to Rafi or myself. Reach out to Bill, because we're really just here to make it happen.
Anything from you, Rafi?
Oh, I just want to thank you.
I appreciate you guys coming today, and I think that we should maybe make this sort of a semi-regular chat, and we could invite other proposal builders to come here, talk about what they want to build, because as someone who just had my proposal passed last week, I understand sort of the work that you have to put into to craft a proposal like this, right? And like there's many hours of work behind that, and we definitely need more people, more builders coming into the Denounce ecosystem, and to build applications, to build different sort of proliferation campaigns and all kinds of crazy ideas. So yeah, I mean, again, thanks for coming. I really appreciate the conversation, and I hope that we can continue this sometime in the future.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks.